Good morning, happy Friday, Shana Tova to everyone, Hag Sameach to our Israeli friends. I'm very excited today to be introducing you to Ayesha Prakash. Ayesha and I have known each other for quite some time. She's a cybersecurity thought leader with more than 15 years of experience across the IT and security industries. Her focus has been on driving global business development and marketing efforts in the cybersecurity space, working as the head of the global channels and partnerships and as Chief Revenue Officer at leading cyber intelligence firms. She's also part of the CRN Channel Chiefs, which is a list of leaders who drive the channel agenda and are evangelizing the importance of partnerships in the channel, and she was awarded the Top Gun 51 designation from the Channel Partners Online. She also serves on our advisory board at Pace University, and she has been an active participant in the ISACA organization and Women in Cyber and the Alliance of Channel Women. Today, Ayesha is serving as the Global Channels Vice President of KELA. KELA is a company that I know from Israel quite well. They are thought leaders in cyber intelligence, and this technology was developed by innovators that came out of Israel's famous 8200. For you Americans, that's the 8200 unit, which is the intelligence unit. And I'd like you to please welcome Ayesha to the program. Welcome to the program, Ayesha.
Thank you so much, Ariel. I'm glad to be here. And thank you everyone for joining this morning. I hope everyone's having their coffee.
Yes, that's a requirement, by the way, of this interview series. So Ayesha, let's start off with asking about how you got interested in cybersecurity and specifically how you navigated over to threat intelligence.
My entry, I guess I was in tech into the cybersecurity realm was by chance. And I would say a very good chance for that matter. You know, I've always found it fascinating that the cost of entry for a cyber attacker is so low, right? Anyone with a computer today, or even someone at a young age has the ability to make an impact, right? Whether it's an organization, big, medium, or small size. And really being able to help companies protect themselves in this way is something that I've always found interesting. And frankly, as many of you guys know, it's super rewarding, right? And as far as intel is concerned, I mean, what's not like, who doesn't like good intelligence? But information, I mean, if you think about it, it's really key to be proactive and get ahead of the attackers. And being able to help organizations, allowing them to be proactive in their approach and prioritize their threats, what matters to them most is quite exciting. I've had a chance to really work with some of the top intelligence experts around the world, and I'm really, excited that I get the opportunity to support these intelligence experts as they're on the front lines, so really fighting the good fight.
Great. You said you got into it by chance. What did you mean exactly? I always find the backstories very interesting.
Well, so I was in sales and technology, working for a media monitoring company. Think of it from an OSINT perspective. Essentially, their job is to identify, if your brand has a positive, negative, or neutral toning, if your products and your CEOs, etc. So identify the target account. I was an endpoint security company, and my plan was to go demo my platform to them. So one thing led to another. The conversations with the VP and the CEO turned into them creating a position for me on spot. And next thing you know, I was working for a very technical endpoint security company. Within a week, I had to fly to a Secure World conference. And that's really how I got into security. I guess I was selling, and next thing you know, I was getting a job.
You caught the cyber buzz like we all have.
I did.
Yes, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about threat intelligence, what it is, and why you think organizations need to pivot some of their investment money in this direction?
And digital transformation, I know it's a really big buzzword, but I think it's important to mention that. And I'll say, digital transformation has really led to a greater connected world, as we know, and also it's revolutionized the globalized economy, but it's also brought a lot more risk for organizations in the form of cyber threats today. What threat intelligence can allow you to do is really detect threats before they turn into real attacks. And rooted in that threat intelligence data, in threat intel, what they can provide, what threat intel can provide you with is context, like who's attacking you, what their motivations are, what their capabilities are, right? And which in turn can really help you, again, make more informed decisions and help you mitigate risk for your organizations. You know, we talk about defenders, right? All of you defenders on the call, you know, you have to be on your game, so to speak, 100% of the time. An attacker just needs one chance to make a big win. And unfortunately, that's just the adversarial nature, right, of cyber attacks and cyber threats. And this is another reason why being proactive in your approach is critical. And threat intelligence, having a threat intel program can really help you do that.
And one of the things that comes to mind when I think about this is the whole idea that we have cyber criminals from nation states that we have no jurisdiction over. We have no way to prosecute these individuals who are, you know, doing nefarious acts against critical infrastructure, against our corporations and the companies that are the backbone of our economy. And so understanding it from an intelligence perspective is important so that we can know our enemies, right? You know, keep your enemies, friends close, keep your enemies closer. That kind of mentality, I think, is the threat intelligence model. So what do you think some of the challenges are that come around trying to get information out of the dark net?
Well, navigating the dark net, right? Number one, I mean, just getting around the dark net. You can't just really go ahead and search for a website, right? It generally needs to, you need to generally have the know-how, how to obtain specific URLs, how to get into certain markets and forums, and finding and qualifying just these sources can be a big difficult part. And then there's technological challenges. So many of these high quality sources, they're getting smarter, right? They're implementing, you know, detection tools to really be able to detect these bots or these personas that are crawling the sites. They're trying to detect law enforcement, right, within their forums and marketplaces, really causing a lot of these a lot of defenders to get banned. In fact, users or defenders are just commonly just listening in and have no activity if they've been inactive for a while, or if they haven't, you know, don't have a proper reputation or have bad reviews, they also get banned. So having really a good technology that can mimic human behavior can really help defenders properly collect data and still obfuscate this themselves. And then also you need technology to be able to scale, right? Because the dark web is a massive place, right? So you need automation to be able to really collect data. And also when you build this type of good technology structure, you can really focus your efforts on automating the collection work and then focus your time on analysis and of course prioritizing the threats that matter to you most. There's language barriers. I mean, Russian server hacking forums, yeah, I believe cutlets means a stack of potatoes. So first it's crucial that you're in all different language speaking forums and marketplaces, number one. Number two, it goes another step with that. As I mentioned, you need to make sure you're actually understanding the slang within these different language forums, and also are able to communicate with the threat actors with those slangs. So as I mentioned, Russian cyber hacking forums, they call cutlets, which is essentially a stack of bills, right? So knowing these type of different slang words is important, so you're able to identify yourself as a threat actor, to the threat actor, so to speak. Deletion of data, so this happens all the time. We saw this happen with Empire just a couple of weeks ago. It was an exit scam. Sites are taken down, posts and listings are constantly taken down. So again, it goes back to having a good technology structure to be able to cache this data as soon as it's found. So it's accessible to you no matter what, even if it gets taken off. Also filtering out the noise. Darknet is massive. There's a lot of irrelevant noise. So really, making sure that you're really, providing, being able to, part of providing, I guess, actionable intelligence, I would say, is really calls for knowing how to filter out a lot of the junk noise. And finally, I think this is the most key important thing, is knowing their motivation. So why are they doing this? Understanding, thinking like a threat actor, so to speak, understand their intent, understand their capability, understand their opportunity for doing something bad, right? And most times in technologists, they'll talk about capability, they'll talk about opportunity, how am I being attacked and what, in what tools, right? But that's a very technical approach. So as a defender, if you want to tell a good story to a senior leadership team, for example, and if your senior leadership team doesn't really have the technical capacity that you may have, you really want to focus on talking about the intent. When you focus on the intent, it's relatable. It's relatable because it speaks about the entire business versus just the technology. And if you think about it, it also helps dial back a lot of uncertainty. And if you're able to really understand something, you can actually quantify the business risk associated with it, and actually be able to take that information, be able to relay it to senior leadership and other stakeholders. These are some of the challenges that we've seen, and even our analysts that navigate through it. But I think in the end, what really comes down to is you need to be able to scale. So I think it's important to have a good technological structure in place to be able to, to gather intel on the darknet.
So what are some of the use cases and the data that you think are the most interesting for our audience to understand? I know we have different levels of understanding here on the interview today, and maybe to just give them a little bit of a framework for what does that look like, and where are the focuses for companies? What are they most interested in knowing?
Well, it depends on which team, right, you're working with, and what's important to them, right? So if you're within a stock team, right, what is most important to you? If you're working with a fraud and forensics team, right, a fraud and forensics team is going to be focused on different things. There are different sources in the darknet that that we're navigating through. In the end, what's important is really to understand where the threat actors are, like what's most important for us. And I'll talk about what we do at KELA. Is, to us, the darknet means any source that the threat actor is using that could provide critical intelligence to our clients. And in the end, what that is where our clients' most valuable assets are, right? And that's what's most important to us. And that's where we're gathering intelligence, like in instant messaging groups even. So Telegram, Discord channels. We're also, aside from underground forums, illicit marketplaces, we're also looking at hacking and code, repositories. We're looking at specialized auto shops, like botnet markets, remote access marketplaces, and other info sharing sites.
Thanks. Yeah, that's interesting. So how does the cyber intelligence professionals deal with some of the challenges involved around anonymity in the dark web?
So we know darknet is not criminal or illegal, right? It just really is providing a platform for anonymity, right? Which makes it very attractive prospect for criminals. And this is such an interesting question. And because there is a big debate on whether or not attribution matters in the cyber intelligence community today. For example, if you're a bank, a defender for a bank today, and there's a threat actor group that's targeting you, do you really need to know the identity of that actual person, the first name, last name, I don't know, their social security number? Maybe some of you might say, yeah, I kind of do need to know that. Or some might say, well, actually, you know what, I'm not really dead set on it, because what I want to know is what the motivation is of that actor, what the TTPs are, their technique, tactics and procedures, and also the relevant analysis to understand the impact of that threat, right, to my organization. By the way, all these things that I just mentioned, you can achieve without knowing ever exactly who the person is behind that threat actor group, right? So most times what you're going to care about is whether I can trace the activity of that person, how and when I'm being targeted. And again, like I said, this is a big debate in the cyber intelligence world, and it's really split up between, do I care more about the intel tradecraft, intel threat modeling? Is that more important versus the actual human being, right? The person behind it. But of course, knowing some of the identifiers so you can trace them is what's important, right? And the other piece around these threat actor groups is, we all know these threat actor groups, they're known names. It's rare unless it's publicized and someone's, arrested or something that we actually find out their names. So really understanding the reputation of these threat actor goes along with that actual handle and not their first name or their last name. So, but still there's anonymity, right, in the dark net. So, how do we navigate that? Well, it takes years of experience, expertise in really being able to do intelligent analysis and having a very intelligence focused mindset. You're tracing their steps. You have to be able to understand these threat actors from every aspect. And one of the key things, and this is something one of our top analysts said to me the other day, and I'd like to say this, so I'll give her a shout out. Hadass Odir, thank you for this. You really need to think like a threat actor, having both the cyber expertise as well as understanding how general, even for example, global events could impact the darknet ecosystem. So I'll give an example. You guys are familiar with the recent George Floyd protest in the US. You know, interestingly, it really invigorated the threat actors worldwide, and really, we really saw them take on a very active stance. And they started targeting law enforcement agencies, but not just, and government entities, not just in the US. We saw this happening worldwide. So by understanding, right, this and thinking like a threat actor, it could really expand your opportunities, right, for where you're collecting intelligence, and really help defenders like yourself detect relevant intelligence to minimize also potential future attacks.
Sorry, I was muted. Great. So one of the things that would be interesting to understand is what happens when the darknet sites get shut down. We saw Silk Road get shut down, but then Silk Road 2 jumped right up, and Silk Road 2 got shut down, then Silk Road 3 jumped right up. What does that look like? Explain some of that to us.
Yeah, the takeover by law enforcement is definitely one of the reasons why sites get shut down, although they're not as common as people may think, and that's just because it's so publicized, right? There's takeover by competitors. So, the dark market is like it's a very it's a financially driven enterprise, right? It's a business itself. So there's a lot of competition. So you'll see takeover by competition constantly, bringing services down by competitor forums to just beat out competition, or exit scams. We saw this happen with the Empire market just 2 weeks ago. There was allegedly an exit scam after a marketplace was just taken offline. So there's many reasons that darknet sites shut down, and again, that's not a new phenomenon by any means. This is where having the right technology, as I mentioned earlier, to continuously monitor gives you the ability to really cache this data, or this intelligence, so to speak, and when these sites are shut down. And the other fact that we're seeing is a lot of these large and popular darknet sites are shutting down, and it's really motivating cyber criminals to really find other alternatives. So today, something that we're seeing is a lot of smaller, more targeted niche markets are coming online, and including automated botnet markets and other similar enterprises. And I'll add this too. There's really absolutely no lack of innovation, no lack of motivation among these cyber criminals. They're hungry for profits, and literally being able to create darknet business models when when others are shut down is really on top of their agendas.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think people don't realize how sophisticated this really is. This is the new Mafia. The FBI was created back in the 30s to hunt down bank robbers like Don Dillinger, who came in with a gun, physically robbed the bank. Today, people are digitally robbing us of our capitals, our resources, and our security. The whole level of sophistication around how there is an ecosystem of people who are either the paymasters or the developers of the botnets. It's this unbelievable level of sophistication that is just like how we look at Amazon and eBay with seller reviews. They have the same type of technology that they're utilizing so that competitively who to go to. And the costs of these malwares are ridiculously cheap. A few $100s to get an ATM Trojan or something that's going to cause, significant amount of damage. And people don't realize how organized they are. So understanding it from a defensive perspective, these defenders that have to really have a clear line of sight onto where are the attackers going to focus in my organization. And that gives them a better understanding how to tighten up their cybersecurity programs around these different digital assets, around these different gaps in their programs where these cyber criminals can come in and infiltrate their organization, steal their data, shut them down, et cetera, is really about being proactive. And as companies mature and get layered tools and start to understand where their vulnerabilities and their incidents are and put programs around them to reduce their risk, this next level of information needs to come into play, and sooner than later. Because if we don't do that, what's going to happen is that we're going to spend tons of money in remediation. And if we can prevent something from happening, we don't have to pay to recover it. So that's really the key here, I think, for a lot of people to take away, is that there are ways to get information that will help us to spend less money up front. So
absolutely. And, I'll add, the importance of just attacks, as we know, and, Ariel, you've talked about it in a lot of these, lot of the sessions. It's no longer specific to large organizations. I mean, we've seen a substantial evolution in even ransomware, even this year, in the last couple of years. It's really a resurgence, so to speak. And, it's really important to be proactive in your threat intel strategy. I mean, would you rather wait till it hits you, or would you want to be proactive so you can, go ahead and patch up and make sure that you're secure in the event of, something is coming at you?
So you might have touched on this a little bit already, but maybe we can expand on it. Is what types of the dark and the deep web sources do you consider the most valuable?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, like, Darknet's huge, right? It's full of many different activities. It makes it a great place for a lot of irrelevant noise, a lot of distraction for really enterprise defenders. So at KELA, we're focused on monitoring intelligence from a curated, list of darknet sources, but then also means that, our analysts are locating, analyzing, qualifying sources daily, right? This is just a day-to-day thing for us. But to us, darknet means sources that the threat actors are using that could provide critical intelligence to our clients, really wherever our clients' most valuable assets are. So, we are mainly gathering intelligence, on the deep and dark web, but we're still investing a lot of research in resource and monitoring and collecting intel from places like the surface web, chat room services like Telegram and Discord, peer-to-peer networks like I2P, Freenet, ZeroNet. But, if I had to kind of sum it up, I would say, definitely, look at instant messaging groups such as Telegram, Discord. There's a lot of chatter there. Certainly for the Darknet underground forums and listed marketplaces. Hacking code repositories that I mentioned earlier, definitely look at that. And specialized auto shops, so these larger marketplaces, you're seeing them become more niche and smaller shops now, such as the botnet markets and remote access marketplaces, and then again, info sharing sites.
Exactly. So what are some of the major shifts that you're seeing in business models from a channel perspective, and looking at the ecosystem in general over the last 2 years? What's been happening there?
It's automation and servitization. It's maybe two big words, but so let me give you this example. So this is probably the ideal one. So if you think about the big tech giants, how they were founded 20 years ago, think about if you had a startup 20 years ago. Two guys in a garage, right? That's the story. Doing their own marketing, their sales, their own coding, had to run their whole business infrastructure. That's what you need to be, a Swiss Army knife of skills, so to speak, to run your own business. Today, I have an idea. In just thinking in this room, I can hire a developer in Ukraine. I can hire someone else to do my marketing, my finance. I really don't need many skills to really get my my business started today. And this is exactly what's happening on the darknet. So, if you think about that, if back in the day, to launch a malware campaign, a threat actor would need to know how to code. So getting the actual malware coded and developed, that's a developer skill, right? It's a technical stack. Then you have to spread the malware. That means you got to have good phishing skills. You need to ensure you have good graphics design skills. You need to ensure you have good writing skills. That's a totally different stack. Then you want to maintain access to these maybe infected machines. You want to be able to harvest their data or, and process it. And finally, you want to monetize it, right? Cash out, make money on it. So you have to be the Swiss Army knife of threat actor skills in order to be able to launch one malware campaign. And what we're seeing now is with these smaller crime as a service and a lot of these smaller auto shops opening up, is today what any threat actor can do is go and hire someone to do or buy the malware, I can hire someone to do the spam services for me and so on and so forth and still make money on it. And, the darknet is gradually becoming this business ecosystem, and it's housing all these different products and services, from many different monetization models. So, I would say, as with any growing business, this is really warranting sellers to try to scale, right? They're trying to scale, they're trying to find market fit. That's also allowing them to have more innovation in the monetization process. You're seeing a lot of market segmentation and all these different products now being sold. And attackers and data sellers are literally continuously, they're putting effort, improving both their products, their platform. I mean, it's literally a cybercrime business ecosystem now. And I'll add to that, while this dynamic cybercrime ecosystem is definitely fueling the attackers' efforts, it's actually helping defenders collect actionable and targeted intelligence, right? Effectively aiding us in helping our clients reduce their attack surface, right? And gain a better visibility. And that's just because of, we're able to monitor when they're purchasing malware from one place. We're able to monitor if they're purchasing SAM services from one place, and really be able to connect these dots together and figure out what is the intent of that threat actor, which again goes back to really focusing on the intent can make all the difference.
Right. And one of the things that's interesting is the whole idea of having this ecosystem where, as an example, you have one attacker who wants to have the cryptocurrency that they've stolen transferred from one wallet to another so it's untraceable. So they use these services called Bitcoin mixers. And these crypto funds are transferred from one wallet to the mixer wallet and then to the second address of the ending wallet. And the funds are moved and untraceable. So this is the level of sophistication that we're seeing around this is unbelievable. They're thinking of everything, of how not to get caught.
Everything. And, being in alliances, being in strategic alliances and partnerships and better management as I am, that's exactly what they're doing. They're collaborating with each other. They're forming partnerships and finding ways to really, the net is what they're trying to do is they're getting more organized. They're definitely becoming more profitable. They want to have better ROI, just like we all do for our business. They want to have a bigger supply chain, just like we all do for our business. They want to run their business like any legal business is running today. What are we doing is scaling up and having better margin.
Exactly. This whole outsourcing model has definitely been adopted by them. The best practices in e-commerce have been adopted by them. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
It's like everything that we've thought of to, be more efficient and to do better business, they've adopted, and they're prospering as a direct result of that. So let's talk a little bit about ransomware. We all know post-COVID that cyber criminals have said, oh goody, let's take advantage of people who are laying everyone off, getting rid of their IT department, and let's ransom them and have at it. So what are you seeing in your area here specifically around driving ransomware attacks and the level of sophistication?
Ransomware, definitely what we're seeing last couple of years is resurgence and evolution in ransomware and ransomware cartels. An average ransomware payment has increased by over 60% just since Q1 2020 alone. And that's pretty scary to think about. The sum has grown not only because of the continuous increased activity that we're seeing by these ransomware operators, but also, and very critically, due to their efforts in finding new ways to monetize, right, these malicious activities and threatening their victims, right? And this is, again, going back to this business ecosystem that we're seeing among these threat actors, where they care about better ROI, they care about the supply chain, they're definitely more organized and they're more profitable. But some of the new TTPs that we're seeing, they're definitely stealing data and requesting double ransom. So gangs such as Netwalker, Netfilm, and others, they've been known to now take on methods that's known as double extortion. So that's, they're stealing the data, they're encrypting the data to be used in leverage for ransomware negotiation. So what they're doing is they're demanding two ransoms. The one is for decrypting the files, and the other is to delete them. And I want to stress on the fact that that this is not isolated to bigger organizations. literally, this is a personal example. 2 weeks ago, I'm having a dinner with a friend. He's a small business owner, builder, not in technology, obviously. He's a builder, builds homes. He proceeds to tell me that one of his machines was infected, ransomware attack not too long ago. And at first, the threat actor asked him for Bitcoins for just decrypting the files. And when he did that, he had to go back and then pay him another one, so he would actually delete the files. It had all of his supplier information, financial, contract, and this is a very small business. So this is happening across the board.
Yeah, equal opportunity criminals. The one thing to just, yeah, it's just for you folks on the interview phone. We did a panel on ransomware recently, and that's available to all of you to download and to listen to if you want to know more about ransomware. One of the things I think from the dark web perspective here that's fascinating is that you can see how well they're being organized around creating the ransomwares, creating the malwares that they're going to deliver, as well as transferring the money and moving it across so that they can be undetected. So we have quite a bit of uptick from COVID. I think it's over 30,000%, if I'm not mistaken. Zscaler measured it back in May or June of last year, and within 2 months we had a unbelievable amount of increase in ransomware attacks. So I'm going to start by going to some of the questions, and our first question is from Lewis. Lewis wants to know, what role does machine learning and AI play in the fight against these cyber threats?
Thanks, so great question. So I think I've kind of already been speaking about machine learning and AI in that capacity. I think the darknet is a massive, massive place, and having technology to be able to help your efforts from collecting data, right, automating that workflow, and having technology that can mimic human behavior, that's where that comes in from machine learning. AI is very critical. That can help you collect data quicker. It can help you even cache data intelligence that from taken down sites, so you can focus on analysis and focus on prioritizing the threat.
Mm-hmm. And the machine learning and AI can get rid of some of that noise that we talked about earlier.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's just too much information, and the ability to pinpoint and understand where you should be focusing is really the difference between being effective and ineffective in this area, in my opinion. We have another question from Heather. Hi, Heather. Good morning, darling. Do you hire your own hackers, private investigators to help you monitor the dark websites?
Well, 90% I would say of my company are actually comprised of developers as well as analysts, intelligence analysts. And we're, and these are, most of my colleagues are coming out of the Israeli intelligence elite military units. And that's something that's very unique about us. So these analysts and developers are really integrating experiences from these units. And they're, this is years and years of expertise they have. And that's why they have the ability to really develop technologies and then analyze the data from an intelligence point of view.
Right. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Israeli intelligence unit, the 8200 unit, also known in Hebrew as Shmoni Matayim, what that intelligence unit does is offensive and defensive tactics. And Israel, as you know, is a nation state that's surrounded by, at least up until recently, because we have 2 wonderful new agreements with Gulf states, folks that were very interested in cybercrime and cyber criminality. And so the Israelis have had to be very proactive in this space, and a lot of companies model themselves after the Israeli paradigm. We have another question from Buck. Good morning, Buck. Ayesha, great thoughts. Thank you very much. For a non-technical board C-level person, what are the resources available to educate them on the darknet and its relevance to business safe fintech? I'll take that one because we do have training here, Buck, in our enterprise cybersecurity course, which we're being offered through Pace University, which is sponsoring this. We have a whole module called Cyber Criminals, and that module focuses on explaining to you everything about the darknet, how it works, the onion router, the cyber criminals, and the orchestration of the cyber criminals, the legal aspects of this, the enforcement capabilities or lack of enforcement capabilities in many cases, and what is being done innovatively to look at this. And this is one of the reasons why we have Ayesha on the panel today, because Ayesha has insight into this that is really valuable, and we need to be able to educate folks like you about this, because if we don't get proactive, we're going to end up being reactive, and when we're reactive, we lose. So I can provide anyone on this call additional information about that if you are interested.
Chris's question, how do the formal sector specific ISACs compare to third-party threat intel services? So, certainly, working with these info sharing groups is important, right? I think being able to really collaborate with each other is critical. But intelligence services like us, this is our niche, this is our focus, this is exactly our bread and butter, and this is what we're doing. In fact, we also work with a lot of these info sharing groups, and we provide them with some high level intelligence, right? So what I would say is, if you're really looking for high level stuff, just to kind of keep it in the know-how, what's going on, yeah, certainly work with these ISACs. But if you want really extreme targeted focused, if that I highly recommend that you work with third-party threat intel companies, because again, knowing general information out there, absolutely, it's good to know that, but you don't know what's really coming at you and your organization, right? Specific to you, and that's where third-party intelligence providers like us can really help make you focus on extremely targeted intelligence that's the most relevant to you and your company, and help you prioritize your threats.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If it's not targeted to you, it's not very useful to you, obviously. Thank you for that question, Chris, and we apologize for the technical difficulties all. Next from Jason, how can you talk about the security on your own system accessing the dark web? As an example, are you behind a Tor router? What is the risk of being hacked by going into the forums?
Yeah, so yes, we are going. We're using technology. We're using technology that mimics human behavior. That has the ability to be able to call these sites automatically. That's very critical for you to be able to really scale. Number one. Number two, so that's for collection purposes. But we also engage with threat actors. For example, so we do have personas that we also have that gives us the ability to be able to dig deeper and actually engage with the threat actor on behalf of our client. A client, for example, just a couple of days ago, was in a ransomware situation where we're negotiating with the threat actor on their behalf. We have the ability to even purchase data on behalf of our clients. So I think that's where having the automated technology for mass collection is important, as well as having those personas to be able to engage with threat actors to dig deeper and understand their intent, etc. I hope I answered the question.
I think you did.
Okay.
We've got one from Hanit, Boker Tov Hanit. Ayesha, you mentioned that the darknet is huge and automation is needed to monitor it. Is just an automated solution to monitor the darknet enough? I am familiar with the fact that KELA has personas that are active on the darknet as well as for cyber intelligence. Is it possible to monitor effectively without them? Good question.
Without the monitor, without the personas, is that the question?
Yeah, it's the one in the chat from Hanit. Can you see it okay?
I do see it. Yep, I see it. All right, so Hanit, great question. I think that's a perfect kind of segue in for me to talk about why. This is my third threat intel organization that I worked for, and I will tell you what really attracted me to KELA was having that automation and that human element. You need automation in order to scale, in order to focus your efforts and your time. I don't want to quote these statistics. I read them probably a month ago, but I highly recommend someone Google this. But you will find a lot of information now. It could take what automated collections can do in a year. It could take thousands of analysts to do that exact same thing. However, it's still technology, right? So you need that human piece. You need the human element on top of it. Intelligence is very human driven for that reason. But in order to scale, you need the technology. So I truly believe that in order for you to be able to have the right threat intel strategy, you need to have a mix of both worlds.
Agree. I think that in any cybersecurity type of program, we have to automate in order to be able to scale. And we already have about 2 million jobs in the US that we have not filled for cybersecurity SOC analysts and forensics analysts. That number is jumping up to 3.5 million sometime next year. These numbers are staggering. If we don't have the people to actually do this, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to automate these functions, especially the analytical piece of it, to get rid of that noise, which I think is really critical in threat intelligence. So great question. Thank you for that, Hanit. Joe has a question. Thanks, Ariel and Ayesha. Great talk, advice, and fascinating area. We are still seeing vast amounts of ransomware as service sites on the dark web pervade as zero-day attacks against enterprises. What would welcome knowing if you see commercial organizations really putting an internal program in place with focus on adversarial and malware intelligence beyond doing the occasional scan for account and password information such as an OSINT tool like a Darknet. In other words, are firms seeing this as a serious threat that it is? Great question, Joe. Do you see that, Ayesha, here?
I do, because my connection is bad. I'm just reading it, I apologize. Joe's question, ransomware service sites on the dark web, yeah, pervaded zero-day attacks against enterprises. If you see commercial organizations really putting on internal programs in place with focus on adversarial beyond the occasional scan, absolutely. This is, to answer, I'm guessing you're asking, let me understand this question. You're asking if we're seeing commercial organizations be proactive in their approach? Absolutely. I mean, that's why our clients come to us. And I'll tell you, this is not just specific to big or small. I mean, this is all varied sizes. We're working with even mid-market companies. Everyone's being attacked. I mean, these guys are really just looking at the opportunity. So being proactive before something hits you is very critical, right? So absolutely having a program in place is critical.
And one of the things that I think that's interesting about how this is all evolving is that in the beginning, whenever a new technology comes out, it's only the colossus that can afford it, right? We have a barrier to entry based upon that the company who's put the technology together has to be able to survive and get to the point where they can thrive. But we have a huge small medium enterprise market that is being equally attacked just as much as the colossus does in terms of these types of cyber crimes. And one of the things I know that KELA is working on and we're working on is how do we help the small medium enterprises to get this kind of information at a cost that makes sense for them and in a way that makes sense for them. And if we don't do that, then a whole segment of our infrastructure is vulnerable. And as we said earlier to everybody on this call, we are interconnected. You are doing businesses with cloud service providers, with vendors who you are sending your data to and you are connected to. You are using technologies like IoT, which are devices that connect to other devices. So the idea behind threat intelligence is to level the playing field, right? How do we get in front of these people so that we are calling the shots as much as we can and we are not at their mercy? And this is really where I think this new level of technology, this new level of automation, this new level of machine learning and AI that is incorporated into these different solutions is pivotal for us. So it's a great question. And I'm going to go to the next one. Thank you for that, Joe, very much. AJ has a question. Oh, you want to say something else, Ayesha?
Yeah, I wanted to just add that, these guys, and I've repeated this over and over again, are getting very sophisticated, right? They're not just using stolen data to go sell it anymore, and obviously auction stolen data that you've seen in ransomware cases, but they're also attacking other victims. Just like our analysts are analyzing data and intelligence they're collecting, these guys are looking through their the stolen data they have access to, and they're looking to see if they can target other the victim supply chain, for example, or any other victims they can find from that data. So again, we talk about third-party risk. I mean, it's critical now to be proactive. It's not just because of the attacks coming at you, but everyone else associated with you.
Exactly. And have in the last, one of the things that we're teaching in class, and this is a really pivotal point about the vendor risk management. Our new course on vendor risk management is coming out in the first quarter of 2021, specifically to educate the business on how to set up a really effective vendor risk management program. But what's driving this is regulation. In the last 4 years, we've seen the New York State Department of Financial Services, the CCPA, excuse me, the GDPR, and the Insurance Data Security Act all require that you have third-party vendor risk management programs. And if we look at this from the threat intelligence perspective, all of these players are interconnected, as we said earlier. So what we're going to see is a much more strict, rigorous application of what's happening in vendor risk management today. Right now, it's completely loosey-goosey in my opinion, but they're going at the point where they're really trying to understand the relationships between the third party and the fourth party, because all the third parties that you do business with outsource to the fourth parties. So guess what? It's this whole interconnected chain of information that the cyber criminal, using their reconnaissance and their threat intelligence, are going back and trying to find all those holes in your program. So we need to couple all of this in a way that we can go back to businesses with a strategy that says, you know, if this is your cloud first strategy, then look at it from this perspective and figure out where the problems are and nip them in the bud before they become disasters, right? So this is really important. So I gotta see, AJ, what factors help in keeping threat intelligence a targeted exercise and not boiling the ocean? That's a great question.
That is a really good question. Thank you, Ajay, for that. You know, Ajay, for us, we're, you know, you're right. It can, you know, it's about quantity. It's not about quantity, right? It's about the quality of the intelligence that you're getting. And you'll get a lot of vendors out there that will just inundate you with just data and data. But in order for this intelligence, for it, you know, in order for this data, in order for you to be able to do something with this data, it needs to be actionable, right? And that's what's really important. So, you know, it really understanding. So for you to really sit down and work with experts just like us, we can help you identify what are the objectives that are most important to you, right? Help you with that process. You know, for example, here, and we understood there was a gap from there was a lack of you know, understanding from, okay, I have this intelligence, now what do I do with it? So we really, you know, took that in and addressed it to the market and created a whole managed service around our product to ensure that we can be the extension of our clients, you know, team, so to speak, and really support them and help them so they can focus on the threats that are important to them, right? So they're not focused on the collection piece, we're collecting for them, and they can focus on doing and prioritizing the threats that are important to them because we're doing also their analysis for them. So you're right, threat intel can be so vast. It's really understanding your business, what's important, and really looking at the top down, right? Well, you know, looking at it from a business risk perspective than just a technology risk. And that's where threat intelligence is important. You know, time and time again, you see people bucketing threat into just for, oh, this is just for the SOC team or the threat intel team. No, it's actually, threat intelligence is important for every business unit, every person at every level, from an analyst all the way up to the CEO.
Exactly. And one of the things that we're teaching in class to connect the dots here for everybody is, how do you know how to prioritize based upon the financial exposures that your company has in your cybersecurity program and the likelihood that you're going to have a incident. So when you start to couple all this data together in a way that connects the dots between the information that folks like Ayesha are collecting and folks like cyber risk management programs are collecting, you start to really understand these relationships. So these are critical. We've got another question. You're welcome, AJ. Thank you for the question. We have another question from Sharon. She says, what would be your bottom line recommendation on how to avoid potential cyber attacks?
You know, there's really no one way, right? I mean, there's so many different attack vectors. There's so many different methods nowadays. And And cyber criminals are always innovating, right? So it's really important to constantly keep one step ahead. So again, I talk about proactive intelligence, being proactive in your approach, be where the attackers are and know exactly what they're talking about. Now, for you to think, well, I can't do that all. It took you years to get where you are. And that's why organizations like us exist. So we can help our clients, right, get there and have access to intelligence that we've been collecting for years on and help you support you in your efforts. But again, it's such a big answer. We would need another several hours.
Maybe on the next time.
Yeah, maybe next time.
All right, great. We've got time for one more question if anybody wants to throw their thoughts into the hat here.
Oh, thank you, Marari. I see a shout out.
So maybe I'll ask you in the last minute then if we, thank you, Lanny, very much. She doesn't have a question, but she said thank you. She has to drop. Why don't you just summarize in the next minute, and then we'll give everybody 3 minutes back because I know we could all use it. What are your final parting thoughts to tell folks about this?
My final parting thoughts would be, if you don't have a threat intel program today, I would highly recommend that you get with the right experts to consider developing one and become proactive. And if you are concerned about really, hey, I don't know where to start, well, please certainly reach out to myself or Ariel, and we can certainly, get you connected to the right person. And if you're just looking to really understand what is my current threats associated with my organization, where to help, the net that I will say is it's important for every single one of you defenders to really think about being proactive in your approach. I've talked about this over and over again, but wouldn't you rather know what's cooking, so to speak, before in the kitchen before it's finished, right? Before it comes at you, while they're still putting together the recipe, right, and still making this malware, wouldn't you rather be ahead of it? So being ahead of the game is critical. Just like an intelligence agents in the field, knowing what's going on is important, and companies like us can certainly help you do that.
Exactly. So Ayesha, always a pleasure. I'm so happy we got to do this. Everyone on the call, thank you so much. Happy Friday. Shana Tova to all of our friends in Israel. And please remember that this recording will be available to you to share with your peers and colleagues. We want to create a community of cyber resiliency at Pace University, and you are part of that equation. So we will be posting that. And also, if any of you want additional information on the training that we have around cybercrime and cyber criminals, please let me know and we will provide you with that information. It is reasonably priced and it is well worth the effort. So again, thanks a lot. Have a great weekend and we'll see you on the next Insight interview.